Hello and welcome to the Dreaming and Doing podcast with me, Nicky Raby. I'm an actor, coach, writer, speaker, podcaster and a mum. And in my coaching work, I work with creatives, personal brands, freelancers and small businesses. In my podcast, I talk about success, but not in a traditional sense. I have conversations with those who have built a business from something they love or who have made a pivot in their career. Also those who have built a brand or a job that maybe didn't exist when they were at school and they found a way to monetize their skills, talents and expertise. I've spoken to loads of incredible people, coaches, designers, journalists, app creators, magazine editors, bloggers, content creators, authors, and all-round movers and shakers. I ask the questions that you want to know the answer to. So, how they started, about money, saying no, saying yes, pitching, presenting, putting yourself out there even though it terrifies you, standing out in a busy online world, growing, scaling and making your work for you and your circumstances. The show notes are always at nickyraby.com/podcast and the conversation continues across social media, often on Instagram, my favourite platform, at Nicky Raby. Thanks so much for listening. It's great to have you with us. In today's episode, I am talking to Dr Caz Udall, who is a mum of three, a wife of one, and the founder of the Leadership of Mums. She's a former academic and believes there is more to motherhood than just the small things. The mental load, we talk about this so much, that can literally weigh us down, and if we're not careful, take up all of her time. Caz believes that an essential part of motherhood is having a leadership mindset first. This is a really juicy conversation and one that I really feel is shifting the conversation around what it means to be a modern woman who wants to work, who maybe needs to work, and who is raising a family as well. I do believe there's never been a better time for us all to find our perfect blend of all of the elements that we want to create in our life and business. In the episode, we talk about morning routines, how we can manage our own expectations and boundaries, and we talk about how to keep ourselves in that buoyant state. Because we all know we can be organised, we can put some beautiful plans in place, but sometimes we have to expect the unexpected and be really flexible in the moment. Also, we talk about communication in the home and with family and how we can help our children to become fully rounded adults who take responsibility, who have empathy and who communicate with us and will hopefully become great members of society. There's lots in this one and I would love to hear your feedback or your thoughts or anything that particularly resonates with you. Come over to Instagram at Nicky Raby and tag myself and Caz. All the details are in the show notes. We would love to hear your thoughts. Also as well, if you know another parent who is perhaps feeling the weight of the mental load, feel free to share this episode with them, rate, review, subscribe, all of the good stuff, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Here it is. Hi Caz, welcome to the podcast.
Hey there, Nikki. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. So tell me what you do. I was just been reading through your notes. Life is not quiet. Life is full and rich and all those good things. So where are you up to right now in terms of life and business and all of that?
Okay, so I am a mum of three. My children are 16, 13 and 5. And my husband travels for work, so he's most weeks out and about doing different things. And I've been doing the mentoring work that I do and writing and developing resources for a couple of years now in its current form, but I've really always done this kind of work. My background is academic, and that's where I started, which feels like a very long time ago now.
Yes, it's one of those moments sometimes where you're like, it's really reassuring actually when you get to the place of understanding that what you're offering and what you're sharing with the world is very much a fundamental part of you. I mean, my mum was a teacher for years, and she'd always sort of say, show me the boy or girl at 7 and, I'll show you the man or woman. And I think it's that moment that these skills are sort of inherently in us. So I guess what does a typical day look like for you?
Okay, so we have a pretty busy house, as I'm sure you can imagine. If it's a school day, everybody's up and moving by about 7 o'clock, and we're on the school run by 7:30, so it can be a bit manic. But we have most things organised, and the kids know the routine, so and they also know not to leave things to the last minute. We've had many school mornings which have been shouty, running around trying to find homework and lost PE kit and that sort of thing. So more often than not, they are organised the night before, otherwise there's hell to pay in the morning. So they're a bit like me. They've got the sort of organisation bug. They like to, get it all sorted. And then, yes, we're in the car and off to school. So there's none of this quiet, cup of tea and a bit of meditation and let's plan the day.
Green juice.
Forget about it. None of that. Not until I get back from the school run, at least. And to be fair, my little one's only in reception, so the whole, everybody at school feels like a very new thing for me. I had a few years where both my older two were at school, and then I had this lovely surprise baby when I was 40. So, yes, he kind of threw us all up into the air again, and we had to replan our routine and our rhythms. But yes, so from sort of about 8:30, I'm back at home, and I like to come through the door. This is like a dream day, really. Let's give you that as a context. So my dream day would be to come into the house and obviously not have to do all the domestic stuff, but there's all the domestic stuff that needs to be done, tidied up, put away. And actually that can take, as all mums know, it can take quite a considerable time. But instead of resenting it, I have learned to embrace it as an opportunity to actually calm my racing thoughts. And as I wander around the house, possibly begrudgingly throwing clothes into the laundry basket and flushing boys' toilets, that sort of thing, I then find that actually my mental load kind of calms. And by the time I sit down with my coffee half an hour later, and my Post-it notes and my best friend, and I can actually write down all of those random thoughts that have been like leaping around in my brain and create a bit of structure out of my mental load. And then from there, I then have a rhythm where every day of the week, I actually have a plan of what I'm going to focus on around organising and admin. Life admin, it doesn't ever go away. And in fact, the more children you have, I think the bigger your life admin list is, the school emails, all of that stuff that comes your way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even when Oscar started nursery, I was like, wow, I've got to up, I thought I was organised, but I really had to up my game. I was like, what do they need now? What's happening? And, there's always something, isn't there? And I think that mental load is tricky sometimes to manage, because often in the early years as well, and I'm sure now you've got teens and sort of ferrying them round and picking them up from parties and all the rest of it, that when your sleep goes out the window, that's when the mental load really starts to take its toll, because you just can't think straight and you have that fogginess in your head.
Absolutely, and I think I'm now at the stage where, and I have a lot of friends who are heading towards the perimenopause, and so there's this sense of we've gone through the early years with children. We've got teenagers who stay up late, get up late. I've got both ends of the stick, so I've got teenagers that go to bed late, and a young person, a 5-year-old that wants to be up at 5:45. So we're sort of balancing this lack of sleep from both ends of the day. But also heading into the age where our parents are getting older and needing perhaps a bit more support. And that support it can't be forced. You have to approach that really sensitively. My mum recently got a blue badge. She won't mind me telling you about this, because she has issues with asthma and really struggles to breathe, walking along with shopping and that sort of thing. She feels like such a fraud having got this blue badge, and I've been nagging her for a long time gently, perhaps you should consider getting a blue badge so that you can drive and get to places more easily and actually have a quality of life. And that's a tough conversation to be heading into, and actually that's another one of the things that I mentor mums around about how to approach these tricky conversations with extended family, friends, intimate partners, teenagers. These conversations need to be had. And it isn't always very easy. And the more structure that you have and the more care you can give to those conversations, the easier it becomes.
Absolutely. I think it's about being able to create that space as well. I really notice it when I've got a lot going on and I'm kind of doing, I think because we didn't have consistent childcare until Oscar was about 2, I felt like once we had that in place, I would batch and like book myself back to back within an inch of my life. And actually sometimes I needed to give myself that space to actually think and breathe, and doing those tasks such as sorting out the dishes or folding washing and things like that is just so kind of therapeutic, because you can actually think about ideas and do that. But space in terms of being able to answer those questions and support people fully. I mean, back in the day of sort of the 80s and 90s, it was like, divorce wasn't necessarily a huge thing at my school. In the kind of primary school years, but much more so in the senior and college years. But it was that thing of, I'm seeing my dad this weekend and he's going to buy me this massive toy, not like, we're going to spend some quality time together, which is actually sometimes what it is that you need, but you have to create those windows of opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think that's especially important as they do get to those teen years, and rather than it being about, spending money and buying them stuff, because that's, something that I think we probably fall into by default, because actually teenagers' needs are expensive, unfortunately. If you want the right trainers and you want the right bag.
Computers and
God, yeah, absolutely. But, I think I've made a real point. My background's in education, and I actually grew up, my mum was a foster carer. So I grew up with some very interesting examples of what family life was really about, and also learning by, through listening in perhaps and learning about where these children had come from, what sorts of family setups didn't work. And of course, as a child, I didn't have any insight really to what that meant, but I really look back on that and think I can see why, families do get themselves into chaos, and it isn't always obvious. There are things that come along and life can become very overwhelming. And the different relationships piling up and the different conflicts and different life pressures, and all of a sudden you're in chaos. So I guess I've tried to avoid that as much as possible. My husband has a very erratic travel work routine, and so in fact I've tried really hard to create order at home, and then within that sense of order I've tried to create space, as you mentioned, for quality family time. And whether that's having dinner, it used to be that we would have dinner together every day, but when my husband is away, it's me and the children having dinner together every day. And as the children have got older, it might be me and the little one having dinner together every day, and just having that special time, and making sure if we can't all be together that we try and prioritise at least Friday night or Sunday lunch. You don't have to eat together every day. It's just having those touch points during the week where you're all together and actually having that quality family time.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard Sarah Jessica Parker answering a question. I think it was on the Vogue channel or something. I'm sure I was in some loungewear, dining out on the Vogue channel. But they were saying, what's the hardest thing about being a parent? And she said, being able to parent and take care of the needs of each individual child all simultaneously, and be all the things to all, because I think she's got an older boy, and not that I'm obsessed with it, and twin girls, and you can imagine that actually you're sort of what your older daughter might not want to, like, she might not want to have a discussion when your youngest little boy is there, and it's sort of trying to maneuver that and manage it accordingly.
Absolutely, it's absolutely all about that. But it's, I suppose from my point of view, I feel that I am creating time for her because she is worth the time. She's worth the investment. And yes, I wouldn't want to have conversations with him around, because I don't want him overhearing things that aren't age appropriate. And actually, it's not fair to deny her that time, because I'm trying to keep things all sort of CBBS and clean. So it's appropriate that we have these separate experiences and make time one-to-one. And then everyone gets together and we have that fun, energetic, banter of all being together. In fact, we have a regular family holiday that we take in August. It's the best time because my husband's work is quieter. And we've gotten into a habit of going to the same place every year. I think this year, I think, will be our 10th year in the same place. And it's a very humble, beautiful place in Greece. Nothing fancy about it, but I can't tell you how the thought of going back there every summer absolutely sustains us. In fact, now I know that my children, they must have said to me every day for the last week or so, I can't wait till we go to Greece, because it's like a touch point in our year where we all just get to stop.
Absolutely. And that sort of home from home security of you can kind of be who you wanted to be. I used to go to North Wales a lot where my grandparents were, and Lovely. It was that sense of just as soon as you got there, you didn't have to, the teenage pressures of like wearing makeup or having the cool trainers or whatever. And, I would just have my grandparents who just adored me and thought I was mega for doing, putting on the telly by myself, which is probably like a bit of a false sense of admiration. But it was lovely because since then we've been able to take Oscar back, even though they're not there anymore, but just continue that in our family. And it's those memories, isn't it, of I think we just used to get so excited, we're gonna have fish and chips, and they used to have like a VW van and we'd go on adventures, and it was just those sort of small things, again, like you say, nothing fancy, but just that time together where you're just having fun and you're being yourself. I think that's a real key thing as well. How do you make space in your week for the stuff that that you need to get done, but also the possibilities or eventualities or things that the curveballs, which all balls are curves, but that sort of sense of, oh gosh, I wasn't expecting this, but I need to act on this right now.
Okay, so I have learned to be really flexible. And I think that having a new baby is the ultimate lesson in learning to be flexible, because actually they won't necessarily do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. And I remember, I look back at my first daughter who's now 16, and I think I remember that period of being really just the most wonderful time. I absolutely loved being a new mum and having this tiny baby who just seemed to, go with me wherever I wanted to go. It was just absolutely dreamy. It worked out. I was very lucky. I absolutely loved it. But I do remember the point where things started to shift, and it was when she started weaning and she absolutely refused to eat anything.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the shock of, oh my God, what's going on here? This beautiful princess, dream baby who won't do what I want her to do. And, okay, so I'd probably accepted the sleepless nights and the trials of breastfeeding and all of those sorts of things. But suddenly this weaning thing became a really big thing for me and her, and a bit of a battle. But I do remember that being a really big lesson at the time, in just trusting that she knew and that actually she was okay. And every time I took her to the health visitor, I was being reassured that everything was fine. And I think slowly over the years of parenting, I've just learned to be flexible, learned that actually I can't control everything, and that actually what I'm doing is good enough.
Ooh,
so being a good enough parent is actually my mantra. It's not just being a good enough parent, it's having a clean enough house, it's having a clear enough to-do list, it's having a clear enough inbox on my emails. It's all done to a point of being good enough. And some days that the good enough is actually really excellent, and other days that's really not so good. But I'm always aiming for good enough, and I've learned to become happy with that. So if any curveballs come in, such as parenting crises or school, kids off sick, those sorts of things, being able to say it's okay, we will get through this. I am good enough. This is a good enough process. I have good enough things in place to enable me to have enough time to get work things finished, or to to fill the fridge, be able to get to the supermarket, whatever it is that feels like it's being squeezed out because the chaos is coming in. I feel that it's more about having a mindset of it will be okay, it is good enough, has actually been a lifesaver for me over my own parenting journey.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm imminently about to have my second baby, and that sense of I'm thinking about the rules that really, that stupidly I sort of, well, naively, I guess, with my first, that I thought I had to live by, because I don't know why. Maybe it's, passed on from generations, or you read stuff, or you think, well, everybody else is doing that, so I should do that. But actually, with this one, it's really nice having that hindsight of nearly 4 years to go, hang on a minute, of all of those things, what actually works for me and my setup and my lifestyle and my personality. And it's not necessarily, there's so many variables. This is the thing. I mean, you described it with having children of different ages, that you have to kind of block out the noise, because also when you're in parenting, sometimes people think that they know, not that they know better, but they're very keen to share their opinion. And when you're a vulnerable new parent, it can just be quite overwhelming sometimes, or thinking, gosh, maybe they are right, maybe I've missed something, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then it sort of spirals into you unpicking all of your decisions, and then you get to the point where it's like, oh, well, I haven't done any of this right. And it's, I think certainly we were talking about, supporting your teens and being around for those years. I really needed my mum when I was 33 and had my first son. That was, I needed her in a very different way to how I'd never sort of need. I think I had, tonsillitis at drama school, and it was great when she came down to visit me, but other than that, I'd been very independent. And I think actually parenthood does sort of bring out all of these things where you go, gosh, I kind of need a grown-up to step in here as well.
Yeah.
Hope she's available for autumn and things like that. So I guess
fantastic.
With your clients, what are the common themes? What are people, because also as well, when I'm making this podcast, one of the sort of ultimate intentions and aims is I want people to know that they are really not alone, because I think sometimes in our busy lives we can feel like we're the only person who is struggling or whatever. What are the common themes that people are saying and sharing with you?
I would say that the main theme that comes through without them even needing to say very much is feelings of overwhelm, and feeling that overwhelm is just, it's actually quite paralysing. So even when I start helping them to unpick, and even the simple process that I described of where I go around the house and I let my mental load settle and actually creating a to-do list, even the to-do list can feel incredibly overwhelming if it's something that you haven't done before, and if you're not used to starting and stopping to think and stopping and allowing yourself that headspace. Because I think sometimes the overwhelm is what gets us through every day, because we're just on a bit of a hamster wheel of just going and going and going and going. And actually a big part of my work is to encourage people to just stop, and that can be quite frightening.
Yes, because I guess as well, because that kind of meets guilt halfway, sometimes we're in that moment of like, well, I must have missed something then. If I'm sitting down and I've done everything, what have I missed?
Absolutely. Well, and then things start to emerge, and sometimes the things that are coming up are not comfortable things, and they're not welcome. And to be able to feel that you have to sit there and face into those things can be really confronting. And so again, that's part of my role is to help. It's about helping with mindset and encouraging people to sit in that discomfort, however briefly they can manage, just to enable some shifts to happen, because the shifts actually come very quickly once you put the time in. And I talk about doing the work. Doing the work is, unfortunately, it is actually hard work, and it can be emotional work as much as anything. And it can also, because we are mums and we're not just doing our own stuff, we're actually managing a series of relationships. So I always see that mum is at the centre of the universe, like the sun. Yeah. And then the children and the husband are like the planets sort of orbiting and actually asking, where are my socks, and where's my lunch? And I know that some houses are much more equal in terms of the domestic load, but I'm talking about a typical experience, and actually the mums I work with tend to focus a lot more on the domestic stuff than their partners. So going back to that, so the mum is like the sun in the middle, the family, the friends, the chaos of the domestic load, all of those things. We're right in the centre of this maelstrom of stuff and things and action, and actually encouraging someone to just stop and just listen to the noise and take a moment to actually start to create some order. It can be very overwhelming, and actually that's one of my skills, is to be able to cut through some of that and to identify really simple points where you can make a big difference in a very short time.
And I think we're all sort of carrying on I know that I sometimes did. Like, my mum went back to work when I was about 9 and retrained as a teacher, but sort of still, I mean, it probably wasn't the time to talk about equality of the home and all the rest of it, but she still sort of did everything else. She just kind of added to her pile of things. So, she'd still rustle up a 3-course dinner if people were coming round, and, be organising something else, and she would always be at every whatever. And, my dad was very present as well, but as you mentioned, he didn't have that mental load of actually driving and getting the shit done type situation that I think, there's sort of, I'm always very aware of all the moving parts of my house, of like what's happening, planning ahead, thinking about what happens if this doesn't go this way, what the plan A, B and C is.
Absolutely right, the contingencies.
Yeah, and just really sort of, planning, and that can really start to weigh heavy. So when you talk about doing the work, again, what are some of the emotional things that come up for people?
Fear, feelings of imposter syndrome, feelings of not being good enough, feelings of not wanting to face into any chaos or difficult conversations. It can often lead to conversations around money.
Yeah.
So there are some really big topics that can be sort of hanging over, and the reason why the chaos of every day just continues is because actually we're not really wanting to go there and perhaps have those bigger conversations. I think the family life can actually just fill the void.
Yes.
And actually it's the stuff that's on the outer edge of that is the really bigger issue. And if we don't ever go there and have those conversations and make plans for the future or look beyond our immediate circumstances, it's often just a lot of noise and chaos that is filling a void in terms of avoiding where we actually really need to go.
And they're not sexy topics either, in terms of, if you suddenly, we had, 8 or 9 years together before we had a child, and there was just a lot of like laying around and drinking and like
nice.
With
as it should be.
exactly when I meet friends who are just like, oh my goodness, I've met this guy, I want to have his babies, I'm like, no, just like keep getting drunk with him for a little while longer, if that's what floats your boat. But I think we just
get some sleep in.
yes, or whatever you like. Delete where applicable. But I think it's that moment of you move into the next chapter with somebody, and you can totally see, if you didn't have good communication with somebody, how it could so easily break down, because you're sometimes running your days on a bit of a wing and a prayer and meeting across the landing, and then suddenly go, my goodness, it's Thursday again, how did we get here? And then somebody's away for the weekend, or it's just a lot really of all of those pressures, and feeling like we need to have some sort of parent. I was reading this thing earlier about entrepreneurs and outsourcing and delegating, and women bringing more people into their home to help. And what are your sort of views on that? And why do we find it so difficult to ask for help?
Oh, goodness. Do you know what? I think it's almost because things creep upon us. I'm not sure that it's always because we're in, denial of needing help. Your household gets busier and busier, and it's a bit like saying, that having a baby isn't going to change you. It isn't going to change anything. Well, it is. It's going to change everything, and it's
the
a bit like having,
just fit in with us. Yeah,
they'll just come along. Well, to a point, yes, but there's a whole lot of interruption to your status quo, to your relationship, to your day to day, to your finances. Everything needs to be talked about. But it doesn't just happen because the baby's arrived. It happens over time as issues come up, as you say.
Yeah.
I think that it isn't, as I say, it isn't just about not being able to ask for help. There is definitely an element of not being able to say, oh, yes, would you mind help me carry this bag or lift the pushchair up into the train? There are different, we're an awkward nation around those sorts of questions and asking for help.
But and then we just maybe huff silently when nobody helps
silently
you.
Fuming. That's right. But, the idea that you might think, actually, I could really do with getting some help at home. How about I get a cleaner? Well, from my point of view, I have a cleaner because she is doing a terrific job at getting me to be organised before she comes.
Yes.
I actually sort the house out before she comes. Now, if she didn't come every week, I wouldn't sort the house out and we'd be living in chaos.
And my kids that. Is Yvonne coming today? I'm like, oh, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I was saying to my kids this morning, clear your bedrooms because the cleaner's coming. And actually that's respectful to her because she shouldn't have to clear through all their crap. But it also makes me more organised. It makes me keep things in order and, make sure I've got, a certain rhythm to the running my household. And having a rhythm to running my household means that I do need to have some help in place. It means that we have a certain amount of organisation around that. It means that there are certain things that I can guarantee. I know that I need to have cleaning products in place. So I go to the supermarket on a certain day. It means that the fridge needs to be sorted out. I have food shopping that arrives on a Monday morning. I have all of these rhythms in place. So actually I'm helping myself by outsourcing and delegating and having systems in place. But also I feel that by having these extra people helping out, whether it's a babysitter or my mum coming even to help with childcare or having a cleaner, it frees me up to do the stuff that I am good at.
Yes.
And if I'm looking at it like that, it's not about, I don't want to ask for help. It's actually, I want to ask for help because I'm better at doing these things and they're really good at cleaning. My cleaner loves cleaning. So I'm not, it's like, I'm paying for her service. She's not doing me a favour and, for free. I'm paying for it. So
absolutely.
It helps me then to do what I want to do and then I can earn the money doing the things that I want to be doing. So it works, it's a big circle that goes around. So
yes, and that sense of, I know there are some people who get such satisfaction out of those things and I just don't. And there's other things that I do get immense satisfaction and I see that trickle effect and it's great. And I think also there's a great book actually, if anybody's read it, called The Big Leap, where they talk about your zone of genius and how that's a really good way to work in terms of just not trying to be all things to all people, but just really niching down and figuring out what actually works for you and how that works for your business as well and how you can maximize your profits.
Absolutely. It's, I think there's so many business strategies that can be applied to running a family and running a home in terms of managing people, managing finances, having tough conversations. I am the CEO of my home. My husband is also, we're joint CEOs, but I'm around more often than he is. Yeah. I've got the bigger picture of the house in mind. I know that we're nearly out of milk. I know that the cleaner comes on a and that it's good to just rally everybody to, tidy up a bit and help her out, help me out. I've got the bigger picture in mind. I can carry that as part of my mental load as long as everybody's keeping up with me. And now that my children are teenagers, they have a responsibility to learn certain things so that they can one day run their own homes. I don't want to launch them off, into someone else's, into their own independence for them not to ultimately be independent. So that's part of my job as I see it. And that's about being intentional as a mum, as I would be if I was, applying that to my business. I'm just having the same kind of intentionality. It's motherhood, parenthood is not something that we can afford to just let drift on by. When I studied and taught in my previous academic world, I taught human development. I taught about child development and, adolescence and all of these important life stages that actually don't just happen in a vacuum. They happen in a family context. And if we can help facilitate that as mothers, as parents, then our children will grow and become successful, hopefully well-rounded individuals. So they're much more likely to be successful with that support. As would a employee, if you're taking on a new employee, you would support them and you would guide them and you would then expect them to get on with it. You wouldn't just throw them out and say, right, off you go.
Exactly.
So it works. Business and motherhood, they are very much running in parallel.
And they're not things that are just for other people that, I don't have to think about. Because we've all, when you go to uni or wherever you go and you move out of home, we've all lived with those people who it's like, oh, if you use toilet roll, like everybody buys it or everybody chips in. And just people who obliviously go through life like, oh, what? Really? Oh, I didn't realise, or I can't work a washing machine. My goodness, I'm just like, not that I would put my 3-year-old on a bus to our local tube, but he would know the way because from a young age, I've always instilled that sense of self protection for him. Like, do you know where you are? What's the bus stop that we get off when we get to our house? And
when the time comes, he'll be ready because you'll have given him that incremental level of independence. And by the time he's about 12 or 13, he'll want to go off and be having that independence, and you'll be able to trust that he's ready because you've been letting him go little bit by little bit. So
exactly.
That's
well,
terrific.
He's 4 in October, so we'll work up to that.
Yeah, he's nearly ready.
Go do your supermarket shop, mate. That would be great. Yeah. So
he'll just do it online for you, Nicky, because these kids are so tech savvy. He just knows how to click checkout.
Oh, God, of course. He did ask for a purple laptop the other day, and I was like, oh, wow, we're here, really?
He's way ahead of you.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, isn't it? They always reflect these things, and when you're like, oh, I'm really not on this, I didn't know that you knew about this. Turns out you do. Right, I need to figure out this next moment. So, I guess what are your plans for the future? What are the things that you're excited about, apart from going to Greece, which sounds lovely? But what are the plans for your business, and what's the next sort of stage, I guess?
So at the moment, I have a website with resources, and I do one-to-one mentoring, and I have some sort of, some things that require quite a lot of input, and I also have a certain amount of passive income through the resources. One of the things I've been doing a little bit more of is a bit more networking, speaking at events. I absolutely love that because it really just reminds me of what it was like to be doing my lecturing when I would be standing in front of a room of 100 eager minds. But I love all of that. I've also got plans for a book, so I'm actually drafting where that could go. As I say, my writing is a big part of my everyday, so I think it has helped me very much to work out what my work is all about and get clear on what my method is, so that I can then translate that and share it with other mums.
How exciting.
Which I know it's very exciting. So a book, some more networking. I love to travel, and I love absolutely investing in myself. I think as a mum and as a business owner, if I can find things that complement both those roles, then I'm absolutely, in there. I love travel and being able to go off and meet interesting people and just learning and growing and feeling like I'm really participating in the world. And I think for having teenagers, you can't not participate in the world because they are so on the button all the time. Push. I don't use the language that they use, because they would be embarrassed if I was to be talking about getting lit all the time and all of that sort of stuff. But I know it, and I know enough of it to be able to sort of keep up with them. I think that's what
and
it's
about. And you can
about.
teach it to me, because I'm learning stuff as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's really lovely that you just set yourself up in a way that what you have to offer can help people in different formats and in different ways. And I always say this to my clients, is that not actually everybody needs you one-to-one. Sometimes people need your services, your secret sauce, whatever it is, privately, or they want to do an online course, or they want to sit on the sofa and listen to you, or whatever it is. That don't withhold those things because of your own limiting beliefs, which may be like, well, I don't know if I could ever write a whole book, or I don't know whether I could work out the technology to do an online course. I think it's just really like how you've mentioned, is just being really open to all of those possibilities, because people need, we didn't even have podcasts before sort of 2007 or something, that's how long I've been listening to them.
It's all changed so much, hasn't it? The fact that we as mums can connect with each other every day, every minute of every day, through Instagram and social media platforms, and feel that we're getting some encouragement and reassurance is incredible. When I had my first baby. My mobile phone was one of those old brick things, and I remember writing down all of the congratulations on the birth of your new baby, because I had no way of storing those messages. It was such a long time ago now, relatively speaking, of course. But no, now it's all, it's all so quick, and we're it's so advanced, and we've got to keep up with young people. And actually, I know young people and social media is a part of a much bigger conversation, but I really embrace it as a mum. And I think the reason why I've been able to embrace it is because I'm on it as well. And I actually sit there and we chat and we talk about what we're doing on Instagram and what we're doing. Well, I don't understand Snapchat, but I don't need to. I just need to trust that they're using social media responsibly, and it's part of our family vocabulary, part of a bigger conversation, being open and learning with them, not feeling like we've got this demon in the room with social media. So yes, absolutely, always looking for opportunities to chat and learn and grow and just be excited about stuff.
Amazing. And what's your website, if people, or your Instagram handle, if people want to come and not Snapchat you, but come and hang out online?
No, don't bother. So Instagram is Dr Caz _leadership of mums. And my website is leadershipofmums.com, and all of my information and contact details are on there.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I do feel like, we've got our cleaner coming tomorrow, so on a Wednesday, so I do feel like I need to go and clean and do all that sort of stuff. She was away last week having a lovely time in Spain, and I've definitely sort of noticed the difference. But
lovely.
Matt did say to me earlier in the week, like, when the new baby comes, should we continue with the cleaner? And I was like, what do you mean? Because, obviously I'm going to be at home more. Do you think I'm going to do that? And he's like, no, I was just thinking she might drive you mad when you're trying to sleep. I was like, yeah, we know we probably don't have children that sleep, so we'll work it out. But I do like my kitchen to be clean. But thank you so much. I've really loved chatting.
Thank you, Nikki. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you thought of the episode and share any takeaways with me. Come and find me across social media at Nicky Raby, or you can visit the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast.